Welcome everyone to this CELPIP Listening Part 5 video discussion analysis. Now I'm just here in the CELPIP library in the Listening Part 5 section. And before I get started, I want to remind you that Listening Part 5 focuses more on CLB 7+. What does that mean? Well, that means that if you need to get a higher score on the CELPIP, 7 or higher, then you need to do much better in this part because part 1, 2, 3, and 4, they will be easier for you, but part 5 and 6 will be more difficult. And higher levels need to do better in part 5 and 6 to get higher scores, okay? Now, if you need CLB 4, 5, or 6, then this part will be more difficult and the questions will be more difficult, so it could be more difficult to get correct answers in this part. And CLB 4, 5, and 6, you need to do better in part 1, 2, 3, and 4, okay? So yes, the video discussion will be a more complex topic, okay? And the questions will be more difficult. And so, higher levels, you need to focus on trying to get high scores in this part, okay? And then I want to remind you about the Listening Part 5 video discussion tips and strategies video, okay? Now that video will give you some more information about just some strategies that you can use for listening part 5, some tips that we can use to answer the questions more easily, and what information we should focus on, and some of the tips and strategies that I will be using in this part. And I'm going to give you a few of those in this video too. But if you want a more in-depth analysis of tips and strategies, then I will leave a link in the description box to that video. Okay? So then everyone, let's get to today's sample, parental concern, okay? So then I'm here in the front page of today's lesson sample, and you will see that it says there are 6 sections in this sample, okay? The video analysis, which you're watching now. Then there's some vocabulary building, okay? Vocabulary building exercises are really great to improve our vocabulary. Now, this is a word list of vocabulary that you will hear in this listening, okay? Yeah. You will hear this vocabulary and then some basic meanings, some synonyms, and some antonyms. So you should study the word list. And then there's this great exercise where you read the sentence. New employees should focus on working hard without their earnings. And then you need to think of one word that could go in there from maybe calculating, one word that can go there from the word list. Let's see, new employees should focus on working without calculating their earnings. So you have that, you put that word in there, and then afterwards you submit, you check, and look, oh, I got it correct, but I only got 7%. I need to try to get at least 70%. Very great exercise to help you build your vocabulary, and then you should do all the sentences, everyone. Very good exercise. And then we also have some comprehension building, okay? Comprehension building is a great exercise to help you improve your listening and comprehensive skills. You listen to something.
New season, new schedule, more work, less money.
So you heard that, and then you need to decide which one has the same meaning. A, B, neither A nor B, or both A and B. Wow, that's a really great exercise to build your comprehension. Strongly recommend that. Okay, and then we have the following dialogue. This will be the dialogue from the video we hear, and also you follow along, and then you should put a word that you hear in there. Great for building your dialogue skills or following dialogue. And also you have the script there. Okay, very good exercise as well. And then we have test practice 1, which we are going to do today. And then you have a test practice 2, which is a review. So great practice, everyone, to help you improve your listening skills. And this lesson sample page will be in the link in the description box. Okay, so you will get that after the analysis. Okay, so now let's get started with today's analysis. Okay, everyone, so here we are, and it's a video discussion. We have our video, and after the video, we have our 8 questions, okay? All right, I'm just gonna start over again. Now, first, before we get started, I do want to give you some important listening tips, okay? So, the first thing about listening part 3, the first tip, which is important about listening part 5, is that in this discussion, we usually have 3 speakers. Here's one, and you can see here's another one, and you can see here's another one. Usually 3 speakers in the video, okay? And now, everyone, most of the time they tell you who the speakers are, okay? They can tell you names. Sometimes they don't. So if they don't tell you the names, I think this one they don't, we have to remember about the characters, okay? We have to remember something about this character. We have to remember something about her, and we need to remember something about him. It could be what they're wearing, what they look like, their age, okay? And that's important. That's the first thing. We have 3 characters, and we need to keep in mind who they are and also what their position could be. Maybe manager, maybe director, maybe leader, team leader. We need to try to keep that in mind, okay? The second tip that I'm going to give you is that we need to understand what is the overall main idea of the discussion they're having. What is the discussion mainly about? Now, they do tell you at the beginning, they do tell you what, or they may tell you what they are discussing, okay? Usually, the discussion is about something related to work. Can be the work schedule, can be the work managers, can be the shifts, can be the a new rule, okay, a new work policy, maybe something new about the workplace. We need to understand what is the main discussion about. Okay, that's very important. Now, the third tip that I'm going to give you about the video discussion is we need to understand what each person's opinion is about the discussion, okay? We need to understand what each person's opinion is about the discussion. So, for example, so what does she think? What is her point of view about the discussion? What about her back there? What's her main point? And then what about him over here? What does he think about what they are discussing? We need to keep in mind what each person thinks about what they are discussing, okay? And one thing that we need to look at is, Do they agree with each other? Okay. Does he agree with her? And does she agree with him, with her? Agree or disagree? We need to keep that in mind. Or what's something that they all agree with or disagree with? Okay. All right. And then the next tip that I can give you is usually, or sometimes, not always, they make some solutions or some plans to deal with the discussion. Maybe they decide to talk to the manager about it. Maybe they decide to work together to solve the problem. What is the way that they try to deal with their issue? Okay, that's also important. Okay, and now generally speaking, we also need to focus on full sentences, everyone. We need to try to keep as many full sentences as we can. Remember, we're trying to mainly think about ideas, not just words, so keep that in mind. Okay, we need to listen to full ideas. That's the best way to listen. Okay. And the last tip that I will give you is related to time. Okay. We will have 4 minutes, 4 minutes for 8 questions. And you will have the time here at the bottom. So, everyone, we need to keep that in mind. We can't spend too long on each question. And so we need to try to maybe spend about 30 seconds per question, right? 30 seconds. So 2, 4, 6, 8, exactly. 30 seconds is 4 minutes. Okay, some questions are longer than others. And if the answers are longer, then maybe we should try to do the shorter ones first. But I feel like the main thing is just to keep track of time and not spend too much time on one question, okay? Sometimes if you don't remember, you can skip the question and go to the next one. But definitely, everyone, keeping track of time is something important. All right, and then the last part is about vocabulary. Everyone, sometimes there could be a word that we're not sure about, or sometimes there's a word that we think we heard, but we're not sure if that's the answer. Let me tell you something. Lower levels, they usually choose the answers with the word they remember. But we need to ask something very important. Okay? We need to remember something. Firstly, this is not a vocabulary test or a word you heard test. No, it's not a word you heard test. This is an idea test. It's a listening test. So we need to remember ideas, not only words. So keep that in mind. And the best way to avoid choosing words is to try to make word connections. Maybe you remember the word displeased, but did you remember displeased about job duties? Or was it displeased with her schedule? Displeased with the manager? So, this is what I mean. Try to keep word connections, not just one word. That will really help you out. Okay? And then lastly, everyone, don't forget that we need to make sure we understand the questions. Who are they asking the question about? This is where a lot of students make mistakes. See, here's about the younger woman, here's about the older woman. You see, here's about the man. Like I said, what do the man and older woman agree on? So, we need to remember those things. We need to remember what each person thinks to choose the correct answer. Some answers are about the other person, not the one that we need to focus on. Okay? So make sure that you think first who is the question about and try to remember what their ideas were. Okay, and then of course, everyone, taking notes are very useful for this part. I do remember that, or I do think that listening and repeating as much information is very important. Listening and repeating in your mind. This will give you some mental notes. Mental notes are important. But at the same time, we should or we could take some notes, and that will be beneficial for us. Okay? But if we take notes, make sure we don't take long notes because that will distract us from the listening. We need to focus on the listening, not our note taking. Okay? Very important. So then, everyone, keep those tips in mind. And now let's get started with today's analysis. And we're going to be doing test practice 1. So then, everyone, I want to remind you that we are going to be doing this listening together. I'm going to be giving you a chance to watch the video and listen carefully. And then after that, we're going to be answering the questions together, or you're going to be answering the questions. I'm going to give you a chance, okay? And then we will analyze everything. Okay, so let's get started with today's video.
I'm not sure how I feel about basing grades on assignments more than the tests, especially since parents at home can be helping out the children. I feel like it's cheating in a way.
Honestly, I'm guilty of that completely. Sometimes if Lauren has to get something done and she's not in the mood for getting it done, I tend to lose my patience a bit and just do it for her.
You know, I share both of your concerns. I mean, I feel like, we're in a way, we're the ones that are going back to school. And I don't know, but some of these assignments are pretty tough.
At the same time, I'm not that worried since it's not like they're pitting the students against each other in some sort of competitive way. And I've always believed parents need to get involved in their kids' education.
For sure, but don't you think if we're doing our kids' homework that we are blocking their own learning in some way? I guess that's the whole point of tests, is to see what information is being retained by the kids.
You know, I totally agree. I kind of wonder how kids are keeping up. I know on test day that with Peyton, I have to always remind him to get cracking and, get the ball rolling. I just really wonder if that's just, where we want to go.
You've got a point there. I tend to bribe Lauren with more allowance if she gets good grades on her exams. But if she knows they're not that important anymore, I think she's going to turn the tables on me somehow.
Well, thank God Daffy's always on top of her tests and assignments. She actually has to remind me about her homework schedule. So I'm not worried about her losing motivation.
Well, thank God it's only a pilot project, and we'll have to see by the end of the year how the kids are feeling and what they really want to do with it.
So then let's get to the questions. So let's remember we have 4 minutes for the questions. So there are 8 questions. So that's about 30 seconds per question. And I will be timing you here, okay? Let's get to question number 1. Okay, now let's get to question number 2. Okay, now let's get to question number 3. Okay, let's get to question number 4. Okay, let's go to question number 5. Okay, let's get to question number 6. Question number 7. Question number 8. So then, let's get to the questions. I hope you were able to get everything. Let's check. So, question number 1, what are the speakers discussing? The difficulty in writing tests and assignments, changes in assessment at their children's school, why the school should reduce assignments and tests, how tests can prove student knowledge. Well, I definitely don't think it's D, about how tests can show or prove the knowledge. And also, I don't think it's C because it's not about why the school should reduce it. They should reduce it. Now, A or B, difficulty and changes. Let's see here. Let's look at the script. I'm not sure how I feel about basing the grades on assignments more than tests, especially since parents can be helping other students. I feel like it's cheating in a way. Honestly, I'm guilty of that completely. Sometimes if Lauren has to get something done and she's not in the mood for getting it done, I tend to lose my patience a bit and just do it for her. I share both of your concerns. We're all going back to school in some way, but I guess we're going to find out what we can remember back then, because some of these assignments are kind of tough. So, seems like to me like they're basing the grades on assignments more than tests. Okay, so looks like the answer is B. Assessment means evaluating or how they are going to check the students, not the difficulty in writing tests. More B, okay? What about number 2? What are all the speakers concerned about? They will have to help their children more. Parents will cheat to help their students. homework doesn't show knowledge as tests, changes will affect their child's learning. Well, seems to me that not they will have to help because they do already, they say. And not parents will cheat. It's that they could cheat. So homework doesn't show knowledge as test, or the changes will affect their children's learning. I feel like it's more C. It doesn't show knowledge because they say maybe the parents will cheat. Now, I'm not sure about affect, but let's read a little bit more. At the same time, I'm not worried since it's not like they're pitting the students against each other in some sort of competitive way. And I've always believed parents need to get involved in their children's education. So it's okay to help, it says. For sure, but don't you think if we're doing our kids' homework, then we're blocking their own learning in some way? I guess that's the whole point of tests, to find out who's really keeping that information. Okay. Okay, I will keep this answer. I think it's more about show. Okay. Homework doesn't show knowledge as tests. Number 3, what does the older lady believe about her son? Okay, there was the older lady there. He doesn't need to write tests to be smart. He should take tests to show his knowledge. He needs more help with assignments at home. He doesn't have to have so much homework. So it wasn't about having so much homework and doesn't need to write tests, but B or C should take tests to show his knowledge. He needs more help. Let's check over here. That was about Peyton, I remember. I totally agree. How are we going to find out if the kids are keeping it up there? Okay. I know that come test day, I'm always reminding Peyton to get cracking or he's going to fall behind. I'm not sure I have that anymore. So, for sure, but don't you think we're doing our kids' homework that we're blocking their learning? I guess that's the whole point of tests, to find out who's really retaining or keeping the information. So, seems like she's concerned about tests show his knowledge. He should take tests to show his knowledge. What does the younger lady think about parent involvement? She thinks parents should not cheat with their children. She thinks students should get more help from teachers. She thinks students should ask for help from parents. She thinks students should do more on their own. Well, not get more help from teachers or ask for help from parents. Parents should not cheat with their children. So it's not about parents should not cheat. Well, she did say that, but it wasn't that they should cheat. Not about getting more help from teachers. Students should ask, or students should do more on their own. Let's see. I think it was over here. I feel like it's cheating. So if she thinks it's cheating, then she thinks that they should. Sorry, no. She thinks students should do more on their own, not with parents, okay? What does the man say about parent involvement? He prefers children to be independent. He prefers to focus on getting the work done. He prefers to do projects himself. He prefers to focus on the school. So, well, not the school and not doing the projects himself, but I think it's to do with, let's see here. Remember, it was at the top. Honestly, I'm guilty of that completely. Sometimes if Lauren has to get something done and she's not in the mood for getting it done, I tend to lose my patience a bit and just do it for her. So it's about completing the work. So he would like to focus on getting the work done. Mhm. What about number 6? What does the older woman say about her child's homework? It may surpass what she remembers from school. It is suited for her and her daughter to work on. It shouldn't be as tough as it was when she went to school. It's too difficult for her and her daughter to get it completed. Well, she said here, well, it's not about it's too difficult to get completed, and also not, it shouldn't be as tough as when she went to school. So may surpass what she remembers or is suited for her. I share both of your concerns. We're all going back to school in some way, but I guess we're going to find out what we can remember from back then, because some of those assignments are kind of tough. So it's about remembering. So should be A. Surpass means be more than or higher. Okay? What does the younger woman say about her daughter? She usually gets the top grades in her assignments. She needs to be reminded about when to do her work. She is very focused and on track with her studies. She has to write tests to know she's doing well. I remember this one, okay, and it's not about getting the top grades or her daughter needs to be reminded or has to do tests about her daughter being very focused. And that was towards the end. Well, thank God Daffy's always on top of her tests and assignments. So she's always on top of it means that she's always doing the work and is focused. So should be C, okay? On track means focused. What will the changes look like in the long run? So in the future, they will enhance learning, they will decrease learning, they're still being studied, they are improving studies. Well, it said here in the end, I remember, at the end of the day, it's only a pilot program. So we'll have to see at the end of the year how the kids do and how they feel, which is what really matters. So a pilot program means that they are testing it out to see how it works. And that shows they are still being studied because it's a pilot program. So how do we do? Let's have a look. Well, everyone, I hope you were able to get 8 from 8, okay? All right, and if you weren't able to get 8 from 8, what can we do to practice? Okay. Well, the first thing we can do is review the answers, everyone. We need to review the answers and we need to find out why the answer is the answer. Okay, and at the same time, we need to find out why the answers are not the answers. Very important for improving our comprehension, okay? And then, of course, we need to check the script. We need to read the script. We need to understand how ideas are expressed. We need to understand vocabulary. And it's a very good way to understand how ideas are being expressed. And that way, that will really help improve our knowledge of these conversations and discussions, okay? And for that, everyone, like I mentioned, we're going to be leaving a link in the description box to our lesson sample. And in the lesson sample, everyone, don't forget, we have vocabulary building, comprehension building, and following dialogue exercises. These exercises will really help you build your listening and language skills. And also very important, let's not forget about test practice 2. Test practice 2 is great because you get to listen again. Okay, you do the listening again, you watch the video, and then you get to answer the questions, but different questions, everyone. Not the same questions. There's different questions with different answers. And that will be a great way for you to build your knowledge. And lastly, everyone, let's not forget about CELPIP Library. Now, CELPIP Library has over 60 examples. That's over 60 videos, everyone. 60, 70 videos. With version 2s, could be even 100 videos. Excellent practice for you to get lots of knowledge, okay, about different discussions and different topics. They're all, and also questions. Great practice, everyone. And with discount code CELPIP79, discount code CELPIP79, you can subscribe to CELPIP Library for a very low price of $10.99. That's a great deal, everyone. 3 months, that's about 90 exams, and there are about 90 exams in the library. 90 listenings, readings, writing, speaking, samples. Okay, so if you're serious about getting 7 or higher or 9 or higher, depending on your level, I strongly recommend you subscribe to CELPIP Library. Okay, so don't forget, everyone, practice makes perfect.